Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
G'day there folks, Colin here from the Home Building Hub, and I am here with co-host Darren Brennan, and we've also got a special guest for you today, which we'll introduce in a second. What we thought we'd do today is, rather than hearing from Darren and myself ramble on, we've actually got someone come in, a special guest who has built 2 homes and is about to build their 3rd. And we'd love for this person to give you some of their experiences, their insights, their tips, their tricks, and some of the common things that they've come across throughout their journeys, and basically allow you to hear it from a customer's point of view. So this will be a really valuable episode for you, and really looking forward to it. Darren, what about yourself, mate?
Yeah, thanks, Cole, mate. Absolutely. I'm rapt to expand, I guess, the topics, and bring someone on board who can really add some great value. So, yeah, it's awesome, mate. And I guess kicking things off like we always do, fee for the podcast. We don't charge, we don't make any money out of the podcast, but the fee that we do charge is if you like it, share it. So out there. So we'd love to see you share the podcast. And the other part is if you do like it on the platform you're listening to, please give us a 5-star review. So I'll kick off with a disclaimer. Whilst we are about providing you value, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions. So looking after the lawyers there, and yeah, great to kick things off. But Dean, welcome, mate. Really rapt to have you join us on the podcast. For the people wondering, how did we come across Dean? Dean was my neighbour many years ago and built next to me the first house you built, Dean, and then subsequently went on to build another and then a third. And I'll let you talk your way through that. But, mate, we're rapt to have you on board, so thanks for joining us, mate.
And Colin, Darren, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's really great to be here today, and yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing some of my learnings and insights with your podcast viewers. So thanks again. But it was a great introduction, and you're right. Darren and I know each other through being neighbours, and look, I've gone through a journey where we've previously built with 2 well-known large volume builders previously, and now I'm embarking on our newest build with a smaller custom builder for our 3rd home.
That's awesome, mate.
Today we're going to get into some of the tips and the tricks and whatnot. And to finish off this episode, Dean's going to actually give you his top 5 tips about what I guess to take away from this. Do your best. Yep. Over to you, Daz. Let's kick off with a couple of questions.
Yeah, I guess let's kick off by saying, what's some of the common learnings and lessons, Dino, that you've come across, through the course of 3 homes, I guess, and are there some key learnings there? Over to you, mate. What are some of the things you've come across along the way?
Oh, look, there's absolutely lots of learnings, and I think every time you go through the process and the journey of building the next home, there are even more learnings as well. But look, here's some of the key learnings, I suppose, that I've had through the process and the experience. And look, the first one I would recommend to anybody watching the podcast is take the time to do your homework, because it's really important to make sure that you know where you want to live, but also things like, is land available in that area? What size are the blocks that are available? And then even more importantly, what size house can fit on the block, and does this meet your needs? And I think you may have spoken into that in the past in some of your podcasts, but it's absolutely spot on. And then the other one is, that are there newer estates in suburbs slightly further out that provide better value for money? And what I'm talking about there is sometimes just by going a little bit further down the road, you can get bigger land size for the same cost, or vice versa, you could get a similar size block but for a slightly cheaper price. So they're sort of the things to think about when doing your homework.
I think, Dean, and a great example of that was when we were neighbours, mate. We lived in one of the very outer suburbs. So, you sort of lived that journey as well yourself, where you probably made the choice and you made the choice to move down the road from where your family home was to then give yourself an opportunity to kick off, get into the market, and then move probably to, I guess the next desired location for you guys. So it worked really well, mate. It was, so you've practice what you're preaching, I guess, is.
Yeah, look, you're right, and and to your point, Darren, that was a brand new suburb that was being developed at the time, and the block of land that we had the opportunity to purchase was 740 square meters.
Mm-hmm.
So in today's terms, 747 square meters feels like an acre of land, but that just goes to show. Yeah, it just goes to show that if you are prepared to just go a little bit further from where your desired location is, it will unlock value, whether it's in bigger land size or buying a smaller block but at a slightly cheaper price. Look, the next part for me I'd like to suggest is allow yourself to be part of the process. There's lots to learn, particularly if this is the first time you're building. So what I'm talking about there is things like don't rush to make decisions, particularly if it's your first time building. Ask family and friends lots of questions about what they've learnt when they built. Look at display homes for inspiration and suggestions on what works really well. But I'd also suggest to look at homes already built for how a floor plan works when it's actually being lived in. But also like what furnishings and finishings, what they could potentially look like in a home that's being lived in as well. The next point I'd suggest in terms of the learnings is be prepared to make compromises, the nice to haves versus the need to haves. And just remember also that your first home won't always be your last home. So don't overcapitalise and think about what makes your home valuable should you choose to sell it down the track. And then the last thing, just in terms of the learnings, was, having the right floor plan is really important, but also having a trusting relationship and confidence with the builder that you're choosing is equally as important and will make your new home journey such a great experience. They're probably some of the key learnings that I've taken, guys.
Yeah, good. There's some really good tips, and I guess, Darren, it's good to see and good to hear Dean sharing some of the things that we've said. It would have been a little bit embarrassing if he said like the literal opposite of what we've been covering in the last handful of episodes. But definitely, I think the one that sticks out for me is the nice to haves, the need to haves, in combination with people's budgets. And I think people do try and jam a little bit too much into their first home. And the way I've explained that in the past to clients is say, look, I know you want all that stuff in there, but just for a second, can you please take that hat off, take your emotional hat off, and let's put on your investment hat. Just wear that for a second, and let's talk through what decisions you would make if you were investing in this home, or it was an investment that you knew you were going to either A, rent out down the track, or B, sell. And then that changes the angle they're coming from. And what it does is they start taking things out of quotes really quickly. So I think there's some great tips there. And what would be helpful, I think, Dean, would be if you could please work through and help explain perhaps some of the common mistakes that either maybe you've made or perhaps you've seen other people make along the way. Is there anything you could share there for us?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And you make some good points because particularly when you're building your first home, you'll think you've got everything right, or as you're going through the process, you're learning. But there's always mistakes that will come up, particularly for the novice who may not have built in the past and still learning the process. But that can go for anybody that's currently building. So look, I suppose the first thing I would suggest or recommend is, does the floor plan selected not only work now, but could it work in 5 years based on your changing needs? So quite often, and I know even for my wife and I, particularly when we built our first home, we did think about, does the house suit our needs 5 years from now? If we start a family, have we got enough bedrooms? if we have a guest come over, are we going to be able to accommodate for them? Those types of things. So it is really important, and also it can also play into your front landscaping or driveway and even your backyard in terms of, do you have the space? The space might be fine now, but is that still going to be the space that you need 5 years from now? Take the time to show your floor plan and specifications to family and friends. I think I just mentioned that a little bit earlier, but particularly family and friends who have built before, because they can share mistakes from their own learnings and will suggest things maybe that you haven't thought of. So I'd really encourage and recommend to do take the opportunity to share your floor plan and your specifications around with family and friends.
I like that idea, Dean. When you do that, is to ask them what mistakes they made, more so than give us all this advice, because sometimes you can ask family and friends and they can steer you off track to their wants and needs more than yours. Whereas asking them what mistakes they made can really align, hold on, I just don't want to make those same mistakes, and I'll make my own decisions, but if I can not make a few mistakes along the way, it'll be fantastic. So I really like where that point comes from. It's really pointing at them.
And it's all about allowing you to make an informed decision. So you make a good point, Darren. It's not just about taking everything that you get as gospel and that you have to do all of those things, but it's more about understanding, getting information, and then thinking about your own what you want to achieve out of the home, and making some informed decisions based on that. Look, the other one, which I think is a really important one, and I'd encourage everybody, this is an area to stop and really think long and hard about, is really take the time to understand your electrical and plumbing locations, both indoors and outdoors. So what I'm talking about there, what I mean is, do you have enough power points and other light switches in your preferred locations? Because the floor plan will only have a certain amount that are included as part of the inclusions. But quite often what I've found in particular is that's not enough for my personal needs and wants. The other one is LED downlights, asking if they're included, and if they're not, thinking about adding them in if you prefer downlights versus batten lights. The next one is, are outdoor power points and taps in locations where you need them? And then also thinking of, about the outdoors in terms of if you're wanting or thinking down the track of adding an outdoor kitchen, an outdoor sunroom, pool or spa in the future. Think about what those utilities are that you will need and where you will need them. What I'd say to you, Colin and Darren, is that by adding them in during the build, you can save a lot of money versus adding these things in later. They'll minimise a lot of repairs that you would be required to do, whether it's inside or outside of the home, in terms of if you had to add more switches, or if you wanted to add downlights and then you're removing batten lights, you've got to do plastering and painting and those types of things. But from the outside perspective, it'll remove unsightly conduit on walls because you've had to add in electricity or things like that later. And from a plumbing perspective, to add plumbing outdoors is even harder because you've got to rip through brickwork. So really think about those things now.
Just on the plumbing, plumbing and electrical, probably more so electrical, some good points there. And I just want to, I guess, reiterate the same thing, that it's important that you take the time to understand, A, how many power points are included, also data points, check those. B, downlights. Yes. Some builders will provide downlights through the whole house and maybe a batten light in the garage. Some builders might only provide 20 through the main living areas, but batten lights to bedrooms. So be sure to check that. If you're looking at an electrical plan, you can sit with your consultant, but it's likely with most builders that the electrical plan does not become available until your colour appointment. Some yes, some no. Either way, when you're looking at an electrical plan, look at the right-hand side or left-hand side. There'll be a legend there. And one of the most important things I like to highlight to clients is make sure you check the heights of power points. Okay, so the little ones that's not too far off the ground, they're one ruler away off the ground. I prefer to use rulers because people don't quite get the 300 mil, 30 centimetres, etc. But one ruler off the ground, that's that lower one you have in a bedroom, usually where the side table may go for a side light or something like that. But you think about if you've got a linen or something in your laundry, a linen, a broom cupboard, you might want to put a power point inside that cupboard for the charging of your vacuum cleaner. So there's lots of things. So make sure you remember about the height of your power points. You might want to put one on the side of the bench in the kitchen if you've got an island bench as well. These things become very helpful, and you can't go and put that in because that's actually something that's installed as part, pretty much right back at the slab stage, because they have to, roll that up through for the island bench. So you can't just bolt one on later on. So there are little tips and tricks, but yeah, that's really good insights. Thank you, Dean, on the electrical. Yep.
Yeah, even just, and you make a good point around data points, but I'd also suggest the USB rapid chargers. You may want to look and think about putting in a USB rapid charger into your bedroom so that you can just plug your phone directly in to charge at nighttime. Or you may want to think about, if you have a family and children, do you want to put your rapid chargers in the pantry, for example, or in the butler's pantry, where you get everybody to get off their phones and they're in a room or a place where nobody's going to feel the need to go and access them. The other one with butler's
pantry, in our place, I was going to say, we have that. We have the rapid chargers in our study. Phones go in there at night. There's no phones allowed in the rooms at night. It's great, mate. We don't have them in our room either. I don't want to be hearing my phone buzz all night. I look at it enough during the day, so to put it away and have that period of time where it's just not there, it's awesome. So.
Yeah, that's right. And even another one with butler's pantries, just talking about that, because a lot of houses today do have a butler's pantry. Do you want to put your microwave in the pantry rather than having it in the kitchen? So again, to your point, Colin, it might be adding in an extra power point into the pantry so that you can have your microwave out of sight, because you've got the additional space now.
And that'll win you one more pot drawer or cupboard space.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. So there's benefits to those types of things as well. Look, the last thing I'd just like to say there as well is be neutral with your colour selections. And what I'm talking about there is whites and earthy colours will always be in demand, and can add you can add your personal touches to the house later through things like the furniture and furnishings you choose. But being neutral makes and keeps your house looking really bright, modern, and will make smaller spaces look a lot bigger too.
No, great feedback. Really great feedback. I guess, Dino, were there certain things that you didn't plan for, or perhaps caught you a little bit by surprise throughout the journey of building a home?
Yeah. Look, that's a really good question too, and I think that there's always going to be something that takes you by surprise. And it's really just about being prepared for it, or being ready and allowing for those contingencies should something like that arise. And some of those key ones for me over the journey have been soil conditions are at the top of the list, particularly if building in the western suburbs of Melbourne. Problem soil conditions will add extra costs to things like foundations and slabs. So be prepared to allow for this in your budget. The other one more recently with the new home that we're building, and I think, as the new energy rating standards come into play as well, is achieving the energy rating standards themselves can also drive costs up. Now, there is a benefit to that in terms of that your home will be more comfortable to live in and more economical to run over time, but can be an unexpected upfront cost. So be sure to understand what the inclusions are to meet the requirements with your builder or your sales consultant as well, I would suggest there. And also take the time to understand what are the inclusions for flooring and furnishings, because what you see in a display home may be an upgraded inclusion and can cost more. And that can also include external finishings such as render, for example, or even roofing options could be upgraded, what you see on a display home as well. So just, be really clear in terms of what are the standard inclusions, what are the upgraded inclusions, and it can vary from builder to builder. So it's important to ask that question even from a standard inclusions piece, and just be really clear in terms of what those things are. Because if you're thinking you're going to get what you see, it may not be the case.
I think when you talk about the soil conditions too, Dino, like I think about the three locations that you've built or are building, and the first one, plenty of rock. So there's one issue. So you've got rock through that area. The second
Yes.
one was built on a lot of fill, and now this one's built. Your current home that you're building is right near the water. So I'm assuming, and I don't know, I haven't seen the actual site. So I'm assuming you've got sand and another complex issue to deal with again. So, mate, you've had the whole gamut of soil conditions, mate. You can't have got a better lineup, I reckon. So yeah, it certainly provides its
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah, look, exactly right. And particularly with the new home that we're about to build, that's something we've had to look really closely into. But when we bought the land, we were very aware up front. We knew that there were going to be some challenging soil conditions, and we absolutely factored in for that as part of the build. So you can't get out of not spending the money in terms of making sure that your foundations are right. And to be perfectly honest, it is worth every single cent, because the foundations, as you know, are the building blocks of the home. So if you don't get your foundations right, it can lead to potentially other problems down the track. It's not an area that you want to cut a corner on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a
Great.
very good point. I guess for site costs, it's always been an interesting discussion for us as as builders, or with it being within that industry. So just for people's knowledge, builders pretty much just take the punt on site costs when they give you fixed site costs, and you'll find that there's always, in the T's and C's, there's always going to be conditions that can enable them to charge more in the event that they do hit rock in some cases, or they do need things that like extra piering or screw piles and things like that. So I guess it's tricky because a client wants fixed site costs up front on every block, every way possible, and we do understand that. But to your point there, Dean, it's important to understand that there probably are some things that may be out of the realm of being able to price specifically on day one. It's like, there's realistically a builder gets an engineering plan from the developer, and on that plan it has these little numbers, and they're the levels of fall and fill on the block, which enable the builder and the sales consultant to calculate, based on those numbers, here's the fixed site cost figure. But sometimes the developer can deliver a block that ends up being slightly different to the numbers that are on the initial sheet. So there are things like soil tests and surveys that you go through, and that can give us, pricing up things that give us a lot more information. We can also, they essentially put, 3 boreholes, and sometimes they go up to 5 boreholes to work out, what sort of soil there is, and whether there's rock under there and things like that. And look, there's a chance they could get 3, 4 or 5 boreholes into the ground and not hit any rock, and that may have just missed one. It's not like rocks on every block. It's not to alarm people, but just to be fair and reasonable to your builder in understanding that they price up everything they can up front. But sometimes, these things do happen through the building journey, which is a long process, that as you get deeper into it, as the builder gets more information, goes through past your contract, we're talking about working drawings, you're talking about then getting energy, you said energy rating, but there's also another step in there called engineering. And that's when they're really getting the engineers to provide what the foundation of your home needs to look like. So, yeah, it's important for clients just to be understanding for builders that they're really doing their best to price everything up. And sometimes, other things pop out down the track. It's not a, what do they refer to? It's commonly referred to as a hidden cost. It's not like that. If a builder can stick with the price they've given you, they will. They're not just going to pop another 20 grand on just for the sake of it. It's not really how they work. Okay, so yeah, be mindful of those things and be fair to your builder. They're doing their best for you. Yeah.
But what I'd also say there is that the builders not only got their own best interest at heart in terms of building the best home they possibly can and protect, because it's protecting their own interests. But you want the best home that can be possibly built as well, particularly if it's a home you're going to be living in for a long time. And again, I sort of just reiterate that, the foundations and the framework, they're the bones of the house. So you really want to make sure that those things are right. Then to me, that's not negotiable or a non-compromisable.
Yep.
There are other things where you will be able to compromise, but always, if the recommendation's being made by the builder, it's being made for a reason. And my feedback would be, take that feedback in the right way, because it's for your benefit in the longer term.
And they've got to warrant the home as well. To keep,
Yeah,
didn't mention that. That's pretty important as well. So,
and
yeah.
build it to code and build it to the engineer's design, etc. So
that's
all
it.
those
right.
things need to be ticked.
So
there's lots of protections in there for the consumer as well, I guess, and that's why both parties sign the contract and not one party signs it. I guess it's there to protect both parties. So yeah, agree with exactly where you're going there, guys.
So, Dean, one of the things we see people struggle with is matching their budget to their list of their wants and their needs, I suppose. So I guess the question for you is, during your builds and the upcoming one, how did you manage this in general? I guess if we talk about balancing your budget, managing your needs and wants, and perhaps help outline some steps that people could take, that'll be very helpful.
Yeah, look, thanks. It's a really good question, Colin, and it's never an easy one to manage. Look, if I think about our own situation and going through every build, the first thing that we do is we reviewed our finances and we built our budget plan first and foremost. Once the budget was set, then we looked to build a home and plan furnishings that didn't go over that budget. So really be clear in terms of what you can borrow and what you can afford to spend, and then work through everything else around that. Don't go in reverse. Don't go and find the block of land, find your dream home, but then also find that they're X amount of dollars more than what your budget realistically can allow, because it'll just make that process a lot more difficult.
And it's been a harder challenge for people over the last 12 months with rising interest rates too.
Yeah.
Where their budget 12 months ago could have been $100,000 or $200,000 more than it is today. And I think it's sort of aligning their expectations through that building journey to go, well, hold on, what's happened here? And what position I'm in? I signed up for a block of land that cost me $450,000 2 years ago.
Good
and
call.
Now 2 years later, I was hoping to build this really nice 2-story home and my budget's moved, and that's beyond your own control. So the only things you can probably do is, find more money, get a pay rise, rob a bank, or something along those lines, but work out a way to come up with more funds or compromise your design and your desire and still know that you're going to end up with an awesome house and a great end outcome. And, it's certainly been a challenging time for people in that space. So.
Look, and you're right, Darren, and particularly for first home buyers that haven't seen interest rates increase. They've increased at a level we've never seen before in terms of a short period of time. But absolutely, and some of those points that you just outlined in terms of ways that you can bring the spend down. There's also about when you're building your budget, factoring in risk, and what I mean by that is factoring in that 3, 4, 5, even 10 years from now, if the interest rates went up, would you still be able to afford making those repayments? If you're working on that, you're removing risk, and actually what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to pay down your home faster in the event that those interest rates don't go up to that level. But if you're factoring in that risk up front, you know that you're going to be living in a home that you've built for a very long period of time and not being under financial distress.
Yeah,
good point. And for the record, the Home Building Hub does not condone robbing banks.
That's part of the legal terms at the start, right?
Yeah, correct.
Get your own legal advice before you decide to do that.
I got the money. Darren told me to go and rob a bank. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. And to your point, Darren, it did mean that we didn't get all the high-end furnishings that we may have wanted in all of the homes, and even in the new home that we're building now, we've had to make compromises and we've had to make sacrifices. But what I would say to you is that we also look for ways to give the house a high-end look on a budget. And a great example of this could be something as simple as using a gloss look laminate finish in the kitchen which gives you a really high-end look at a fraction of the price. Another option might be just adding stone bench tops to the kitchen only, where sort of family and friends are going to frequent the most, and it's sort of the centerpiece of your home. And then maybe go a replica stone look laminate finish to other areas of the home, like your bathrooms, your laundry, or other places where you may have bench spaces where it's seen less. And things like that will also help to keep you within the budget. So they're just a couple of examples, but I think that's where you were sort of leading to, Darren, as well.
Absolutely. Dan. And I think also, if I think about your own, building journey, even and I'm hoping I've got this right now. I'm saying this, I'm pretty sure, but I know you guys renovated your kitchen after about 10 or 15 years. So you put in a kitchen that, and again, it goes back to some of the points you touched on, which is your lifestyle changes. So we think ahead, plan for the next 5 years or so. But then if your circumstances change again, well, you can always go in and do what you did, renovate the kitchen, update it, make it look really great. And you still end up with a beautiful home. And, so you just evolve over time. And, I know that worked really successfully for you guys.
Yeah, and you're right. It was, to your point, it was about 10 years post building the home that we upgraded the kitchen. I wouldn't say renovated, because essentially what we did in that situation was we got the framework of the kitchen right when we built the home. And essentially all we were doing was upgrading the not changing the design of the kitchen, but upgrading it. So we upgraded the furnishings, the cupboards, the drawers, the doors. We moved to shakers with a two-tone finish, but we still worked within the framework of the original design of the kitchen and added things like the stone bench tops, to your point. And I say that because upgrading versus renovating saves you a lot of money. If you're just upgrading within the original design and space versus renovating where you're completely redesigning the whole kitchen, that will add extra costs. So just a simple upgrade, not only did it, to your point, it moved with the times as we moved with the times, and it was at a point in time where we were comfortable spending that money and doing that upgrade to the kitchen, but it also added value to the home, and it was a key selling point when we actually did sell that home a little bit down the track as well.
Yeah, I know you touched on obviously working within your financial needs and trying to juggle that, but were there probably I know we were talking prior to the podcast just about some of the items we're going to talk about, and I know you did speak something about your first home, and would there be something about balancing your budget or making sacrifices there that you'd suggest?
Yeah, look, I think I did mention already just around factoring repayments, not only on what you're paying today, but what is also sort of what's the breaking point in terms of when times get tough. So I think that's really a key one to success. And for your first home won't always be your last home. So again, I just sort of recapture and restate that don't overcapitalize, and think about what those things are that make your home valuable should you choose to sell it down the track.
Yeah, good.
Cool.
You pretty much covered this needs versus wants, I guess, in your initial answer to this question, but was there any other points or tips you could give on how a client does go through that, managing firstly their needs and then their wants secondary to that?
Yeah, good one. Yeah, look, needs always come first. So make sure you've included all the needs in your specifications and that you're still within your budget before you think about the wants. That's first and foremost. Getting the needs right when you build is going to save you a lot of money, having to add or remodel for these things later, and we've already touched and talked about that, so I go over that again. But what I would say is with the wants, find what you like, but then look for what comes closest. So it could be sort of in the next step down in terms of the upgrades or finishes, or can you find something close to that within the standard builder's range? And what I'm suggesting there is that you can recreate the look on a budget and still have the wow factor.
Absolutely. I think, Dean, also, it's great you touched on the standard inclusions. And I think sometimes people just walk in and go, I just want the highest level of upgrades without actually understanding the standard inclusions. And sometimes the standard inclusions can be absolutely awesome. And you might be happy to sacrifice on a couple of items so that you can get something really awesome somewhere else. So stick to the standards and just get really across what that looks like. And I know, Colin, we've talked about it before, but it could be, for example, roll a door on the front of your garage. The builder might provide you, 2 or 3 different profiles in a range of different colors. And so you've actually got a lot of choices before you actually have to upgrade. So understand what those choices are up front too, and ask plenty of questions around that so that you can really, I guess, maximize your spend on the things that are going to, tick the boxes for you more so, and that could be some of the easy compromises that you can make, without costing you any money. So, which is great. Dino, what's some of the, steps people can take into managing their budget overall? And, and again, knowing what you're like, mate, I know you guys are right over that. So, mate, your words of wisdom here, I think will be really valuable. So.
You're too kind, Darren. Thanks, mate. Look, what I'd say there is, explore with your sales consultant what can be added to the home post handover without it costing a lot more. And this could include things like air conditioning, alarm systems, even flooring to the dry areas and bedrooms. And what I'd suggest to you is go and get some quotes from external suppliers and tradesmen, and then compare it against the quote that's been provided by your sales consultant before you commit. And you might find that there are some of those things that you can do independently post handover that can give you an upgraded finish, but also save you some money. What it does mean is that you need to do some of that sourcing and coordinating yourself, but the savings will outweigh or offset the work that's involved in doing that. And then even...
I think,
sorry, go ahead.
Too, it really shows the care of a great sales consultant you're dealing with. If they're starting to address some of those with you, it shows that they're actually got your interest at heart too. And it's, I think that's, for me, something I've always done when I've sold houses is talk to people through those things. And I know it's not necessarily in the best interest of the builder. They'd like to sell you something else and make a bit of profit on that. But if it's going to work better for the consumer, then it's a great outcome if they proceed and build that home and they get what they're after at a price they can afford. So, sometimes that's the compromise too from the builder's behalf to say, you know what, mate, you're better off doing that after handover, and it's coming from a great place and particularly if it's something that's easy to organise. So I really like what that's going to.
Yeah, and I think they're things. Yeah, and I think they're things that aren't too disruptive to the actual, the build of the home. They are things that you can do after that aren't going to require, rework to repair. To make repairs to the home. So they are add-ons or add-ins that can be done without disrupting and creating more work. The other thing is, for things like window furnishings, find what you like. And then, what I'd say to you is go to places like Spotlight or Bunnings or maybe even Kmart or Target to recreate that look at a fraction of the price as well. Because if you go and get custom designed window furnishings, they will cost quite a lot more, but you will also find that there will be pre-made equivalents in some of these types of retailers. And again, it might mean that you need to do a little bit of work yourself, but it absolutely saves you money and will help to still give you that look and feel for the finish of the home that you're looking for. And again, it's just a simple little tip, but it could be the difference between staying within your budget or going way over your budget just across all of those types of things that we've talked about.
Yeah. So one of the notes I'd add to that, it also depends on the type of client you are and the lifestyle you have and obviously the time you do or you don't have as a result. So for us, Dean, the business I work with, we do full turnkey, more of that convenience. So all of that stuff's in there, the fencing, landscaping, blinds, and that suits certain people who just don't have the time or don't have the interest in going through, getting quotes for lines here and going to a third party there and there and there. But for those who are, trying to keep it within budget, you've obviously got to have that other balance in your bank account for down the track when you are paying for landscaping, blinds, etc. Like, go for it, because if you are frugal and you've got the time to do it, then you may as well, because the builder, realistically, they're there to build the home. So if they don't include blinds, it's not the end of the world. Go and pick the blinds that you want and pay direct rather than paying for a margin that a builder's going to put on anyway. And they will put a margin on because you're getting it through them, they're getting it through their supplier, and they have a right to do that. So I guess, it comes down to think about the type of buyer you have and the time you will have down the track once that house is built. Once you move in, do you have the kids off to school and then sports and then you got work? And if you've got a crazy lifestyle, perhaps get something with everything included or most things included. But if you've got the time, by all means, so again, this is tailored to suit you, and depending on your situation, think about it and act accordingly. So, all right, to wrap this up, we're going to finish off the last couple of minutes here. Dean, if you could please provide our listeners with your top 5 tips to building a new home, and go.
Okay, so tip number 1, and you've probably heard this before: location, location, location. It's all about taking the time to select the right block that's best for you. So what I'd suggest there is think about the direction of sunlight to the front and the back of the block, and how does that suit you in terms of the home that you're building. Do you want a corner block that allows for easy rear access, or for a spanning front facade of the home? Is it a flat block that you prefer, or are you after an elevation to take in a view? And lastly, sort of blocks, what I would say is blocks located in the first stages of new estates tend to be slightly larger and are often near display villages within the dress circle of the estate. So they're always prime blocks, but they also come with the added value there as well. Tip number 2, get the bones of the home right. So think about your floor plan and what you need now, but what you expect you're going to also need in 5 years' time. Does the home flow, and are the room layouts functional? Will this make your home easier to sell to potential buyers in the future? Tip number 3, don't deviate from your budget, and don't overextend for the nice-to-haves. Tip 4, understand what is included or not included with the build, and ensure you allow in your budget for the non-inclusions. And talking, again, things about like fencing, gates, concrete driveways and parts, front and rear landscaping, window furnishings, alarm systems, electrics, etc. And then tip number 5, be part of the process. Build a great relationship with your sales consultant and or customer service manager. Take the opportunity to learn from the process, but more importantly, enjoy the process. And this will make your move into your new home a very positive experience. How to go with that, guys?
Ripper, Dino. I know, just thinking about, even watching your first building experience and the relationship you're able to develop with the site supervisor there. And, mate, I know a couple of times you showed up with, a 6-pack of beer for the bloke, and, just the stuff that makes people feel like they're in, you're invested with them and they feel valued. They're building your home. You want to give them a little reward along the way. And it doesn't, you don't have to buy them a block of gold or anything. I mean, a 6-pack of beer on a Friday afternoon, and you just letting them know that you're wrapped in what they're doing and how they're delivering that home for you can go a long, long way to making sure the joint runs smoothly, isn't it? And some of those things. And I know, mate, you guys are really hospitable anyway, so that's sort of your style. But gee, it's amazing how good you feel when someone does that to you and you're on the receiving end of that as well. So, it is a journey together. It is something that, you want to be involved in that. And when you've got a great relationship and often that's built on reciprocity, then, mate, it's a great way to be. So, awesome, mate. Really appreciate your time on the podcast. And I think, hopefully our listeners have got some real insight about what it takes to build a home and your experiences, mate. And, and you've had plenty of them. So it's great. Colin, you?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you, Dean, first and foremost, for doing, all the prep work and coming along and sharing. And this was Dean's first ever podcast, so I think he's nailed it just quietly. And thank you so much for giving everyone those tips and tricks and advice. And some people can just hit the pause button and write those notes down and then press play again and continue from there. So thank you again, Dean. It's been really valuable, and we'll we'll make sure that, I guess this gets out there in the next couple of weeks for everyone to reap the rewards from your experience and your insights. And to everyone listening, just want to say again, as we do to wrap it up, we say thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please jump on, give us a 5-star review. That would be very helpful. And the fee of the podcast, as Darren said at the top, is please share it with someone. If you're enjoying the content, you think they can get some value out of it, family, friend, work colleague, anyone you like, just share the link to the podcast, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on a podcast platform like Apple or Spotify. Go forth and do that for us. If you have any questions or any topic ideas or any feedback, then you can jump on the Home Building Hub website, which is homebuildinghub.com.au, and there's a spot there you can contact us. Drop a question in there or whatever you want. That's about wrapping it up. What do you think? How do you think you went, Dean, to wrap it up? You did well. Confident in how you presented today? I think you did really well.
Oh, good on you, Colin. Appreciate the feedback. And no, look, I really enjoyed it. And once again, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure being a part of the Home Building Hub. Thanks, guys.
Good on you, mate.
Legend, mate. Good on you, buddy.
And we'll see you on the next one, guys. Thank you.
1, 2.